guys, it is Carl Brown for GuitarLessons365.com. Today we're going to learn how to play Schism by Tool. So this is just a great song, some really moody parts to it, some kind of really cool hammer-on riffs. We are in drop D tuning, by the way, so you're going to have to take your low E string, tune it down a whole step to D, and then you'll be good to go. So before we get into it, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and ring that little notification bell so you'll know whenever I release a new video. And please check out my Guitar Academy at GuitarLessons365.com. I appreciate the thousands that have already joined it, and we already have a great community, but it'd be great to have you there if you're not there already. All right, so let's get into this here. We're going to start with a little clean guitar intro here. So it looks like this. All right, so this is going to be just the open D string, the third fret on the G. Then 2 on the G, 3 on the D, to this. Then move up to 5 on the D and 5 on the G. And then you're going to move up to 8 on the D and 7 on the G. So you have this. And the second time around, it's the exact same except for the last chord. For this last chord, you're just going to take this, the 2 5s here, and just move it up to 7. So instead of the 8 on the D, it's 7 on the D. And then you can end it with just a low D if you want to. All right, and then there's, the kind of the guitar drops out there. Kick it over to a little bit of a gain tone, and there's basically plays a D power chord. So you basically can hit the bottom 3 strings open. So you can hit that open, and then 2nd fret on the G, 3rd fret on the B. So play those notes, but play it with your volume down or with a volume pedal, with the heel down, and then strum it, and then bring the volume up. And then we go into this, our first instance of this hammer-on riff that you're going to see a lot. That looks like this. All right, so the rhythm is kind of tricky. It goes from 5/8 to 7/8 and just kind of jumps back and forth there. But it's easy. You can do it all with downstrokes, and you're going to make everything really heavily palm muted. So what we're going to first start is with a. You're going to hammer, hit the open D, hammer 3, and hammer 5. So with the palm muted, you can make those notes kind of pop out. And then you go over and grab the 3rd fret there on the G string, back to the low D, so with this. Then you play the 2nd fret on the G, followed by that low D again, so with this. All right, so that's basically the first time through the riff. The second time you start it the same way. Except now you add, instead of just going 3 to the open D, 2 to the open D, you add now the 5 on the G back to the open D. So that extended little part there is what moves it to 7/8 that second time around. So it's like 5/8 the first time around, 7/8 the second time around. So we have this. Repeat. And after about 4 times, we have, you basically, when it goes to that 5, you can release the muting. Just kind of pick that, the open D, the low D string, and strum across that D power chord we did earlier. All right, now as the verse starts, the guitar comes in with some slight kind of slow arpeggiated stuff. So you hear this line come in first over the verse. And then he lets that sustain. So that's just the 7th fret on the G to the open D string, then to the low D string. So you let those ring for a couple of bars, right? And then we have just the 8th fret on the B to the 7th fret on the G. And then you're going to end that part by playing 10 on the B, 7 on the G, and the open D string, the high D. So you basically have this. You let that ring for a couple of measures. And then you have this. And then we basically move this hammer-on riff to the A string. So it's going to look like this. So it's the exact same thing we did down here. You're just going to have the open A string hammering on to 10 and 12 this time. And then over to 10 on the D, followed by the open A, and 9 on the D, and the open A. So it's the same pattern. And then, of course, you start again and add the 12th fret on the D at the end of the second time around. So this. So it's the exact same thing it was here, but just moved over a string and moved up some frets. So I'm going to kind of fly through that because you've already seen it. All right, so he plays that. You continue to hear that over the verse. And then it builds up to an unmuted version of that, which is just slightly different how he plays it too. It looks like this. All right, so that's now just kind of hitting the open A, just hammer on without any palm muting. And so it's the same thing, except now you kind of turn on that open A a couple times. So you hit the open A string twice after it instead of once. And then do it again. And then it's just once on the open A there at the end of that one. So we get. And then you repeat that. Now the third time through, instead of after hitting that A twice in a row like that, he just hits it and lets it ring, then goes to the hammer on. So it's just the third time through, and then he goes back to hitting the A string twice. So it's probably easier if you just follow it. So we have this. Right here. And then back to 2. All right, from there it goes back to the same riff that we did before. The muted version, so just like that. And then it goes straight back to that open version of the riff. With the same amount of hitting the A twice. It's played the exact same way as the first time through. Except the very last time, when you play that 12, you're going to hear a little harmonic on the note. All right, and that sends us into like kind of a heavy power chord riff that looks like this. All right, so this is just the bottom 3 strings open, then the 3rd fret across those 3 strings, and then go 5, 3. So you can see there's some muted strums in between there. So we have this. So you kind of have to be able to kind of mute the strings down here or down here and do those down-up strokes in between it. And then you play, so you have to go up to 0, 3, 5, 3. And then go back 3, 5, 5. One more time. After you've hit that last power chord, as I'm just doing it with a bar with my ring finger, he has one of those quick hammer-ons again, which is just open low E, hammer on 3, hammer on 5, over to 3 on the A. So it is. Repeat. Now the fourth time he plays a slight variation, he does this. So if you didn't catch that, that's just 0, 3, instead of going then 5, 3, you go hammer onto that 5. Instead of this. Instead of that, we have this. And then everything else is the same. So that's just the last time you play it. So you play that riff 4 times, the last time you're going to do that with a hammer on. All right, then everything kind of drops out real quick, and then what you're going to hear is a quick G5 power chord. So what we did, we're going to play a G5 power chord here at the 10th fret. And then it looks like it starts the same muted riff that we did off the A string. And you do that one time. But then there's a variation thrown in. He starts the hammer on the same way. And then, but now the notes on the D string are basically what's going to change. So instead of playing 10, 9, 10, 9, 12, you're going to now play 9, 7, 9, 7, 10. So basically everything, so 9, 7, 9, 7, 10. So remember, you'll do the 10, 9, 10, 9, 12 first, like normal, and then the other ones. And then repeat all that. All right, so it's pretty. So you're just basically starting out with a. So you started with that 10th fret power chord, and then into that riff. Now from there, we go back to the same A open riff that we did before. So it's played the exact same way we did before, but then there's a little section where the drums are just kind of going off a little bit that that you're leaving this part with, that he just repeats the ending. So the 10, 9, 12 part, just end that with the 12, 9 part. So basically the second half of the riff, just repeat it. Okay, and then you're gonna let that die out, just the open A string. Now we get to the bridge section, which is really cool. What you're gonna do to make this, I've got kind of like a pretty high gain sound here. But what I add to it for the bridge is a delay. So it's just a simple delay. Now what you need to do is you need to time it. This song is actually at about 107 beats per minute. So that's what I have this metronome set to. So let me grab this metronome. All right, so with this metronome, I'm going to have it going at 107, so I can play with the click. And then we have basically have this delay set to go at 100 and a quarter note to that 107 beats. So I got it. So hopefully your delay pedal will be able to do that, or you can work out the math to get that going. But it's basically when you get 107 beats a minute, play it to a quarter note, and make the feedback be very low. So you just basically get one repeat. And I have it mixed here at about 40-some%. So it's not quite as loud as the direct signal, so that little repeat. But that'll give you a really cool delay to play with that you can kick in here. So I'll kick in this delay, and I'll play this part for you real quick. All right, so you need the right timing. If you have a pedal that you can do kind of like a tap tempo thing on, that'll work great. So you can just do that live, whatever tempo the band's at. But anyway, so that's what the delay is. It's quarter note delay set to whatever the tempo of the song is. All right, so let's see if we can get this part down real quick. So we're gonna, I kind of brought the tone down about halfway too, so it's not so in your face. So we're gonna have the 10th fret. I'll cut the delay off for now. So we have the 14th fret on the D string, followed by the open A string twice. And then you basically do that same pattern, except now play 17 on the D. Then you do 14 on the D and 19 on the D. So you're always going back and hitting that A string twice in between each note. So we have this so far. So you kind of slightly palm muted too. So we have this. You continue that same picking pattern, going now 12 on the D, still to that open A twice, and then 14 on the D. Then you're going to go down to 10 on the D with the open A twice. So we have this so far. All right, now I stopped here because now we have 3 more melody notes to play on the D string, but after each one of those, we're only going to hit the open A string once. So it's kind of like this. So it goes 12, 10, 12 on the D string. In between each one of those notes, or after each one of those notes, you're going to play the open A just once instead of twice down. So it kind of gives that riff its kind of interesting feel. So we have this. Repeat. All right, so you put those with the delays like we did earlier. Sounds really cool. Now, I will say that during this section, you'll hear a little sound effects. I kind of use it just to know where we do there's a slight little hammer-on that he does in this riff twice. And where he does it, the hammer-on basically sounds like this, so I'll play it first. So you heard that. Instead of basically that hammer-on is when you play the 12, when you do that 12-14 part of the riff, instead of just going 12, 14, there's a quick hammer-on onto that 14. Now that happens, you'll hear some little bells starting. So the first time he plays that riff after those bells start, you'll hear that little hammer-on. So kind of listen for it. And then when he starts singing over it, when he says, right after he says the word atrophy, you'll hear that same little hammer-on. So it's just an easy way of kind of knowing exactly when to do them, if you want to get it exactly right. All right, so now we go to this little build-up part where he keeps the delay on, and he does this kind of thing. the next section, which is a really cool part. So this little build-up that he's doing here is kind of a variation of that bridge that we just did. So the pattern is just, you still... So it's the 14 with the A twice, 17, 14, 17. So it's just that 14, 17, 14, 17 with the A twice between each one. And then just 14, 2 times in a row with just the A string hit once in between each one. So this is the pattern. So after you've played it twice, he really quickly jumps back and plays just the first half of that little A hammer-on riff. We have this. So as soon as you get to that open A after the 9th fret, jump back up here and do the exact same thing. And slowly let go of the palm muting. Let go of the palm muting to just let the notes start coming out. So it's just kind of building up to this section where the big climactic section of the song looks like this. All right, so I'll stop right there. So this is starts with a power chord at the 8th fret off the A string. Take it down to 3, up to 10, down to the open A power chord. So we have this. And then jump up and start doing that 14-17 riff. So that the third time has a different ending. You don't go to this A power chord. We have this. So that's the same chords, but then just take it down to the D power chord of the 5th fret, and then let that low D string ring with it. And then real quick, he does this little. He just kind of just goes up to the 6th fret on the A power chord and back down to 5. It does that a couple times. And then we have this little riff that moves around. So that's going to be, you're going to bar the 8th fret there on the bottom 3 strings. And what you're going to do first is have the 10th fret there on the D string. Then lift it up. Play the normal power chord, and then back down. So then do that exact same thing at the 3rd fret. So and then jump up to the 10th fret and hit it twice. Just shift that power chord up to the fret. Oh, sorry, 3 times. So we have this. All right, so now we get kind of to the next riff of the song, which is a really cool riff. It starts with the open D, the bottom 3 strings, then we have this. Okay, so that's another riff for another time. So we have this open D, and you're going to grab the 5th fret there on the A string, kind of add some vibrato to it. And then play 7 on that 6th string, and then back to the 5th fret there. And then you can play 0 on the low D string, 0, 5, 7, back to the open strings with this. Now you're going to play the 3rd fret on the low D, then the 5th fret, and then jump up real quick and grab the 10th fret power chord on those 2 strings. And then back to the open strings to start the riff over. See, after I'm hitting that, and I'm kind of hitting the open again. So the 4th time, you don't go all the way back up. We have this. As soon as you get to that 3rd fret, you start that next riff, which looks like this. All right, so that's just basically the power chord of the 3rd fret, and then the open string. So, and then just go to the 2nd fret power chord. So we have this, and then you just go 3, 2, 5. So you're hitting like the open strings in between each one. So it's a pretty simple rhythm. It's really heavily palm muted. So after a few times of that, you have some really muted strums, like quick little 16th note strums. So that's really, instead of the open strings, you kind of a lot of heavy muting there, heavy down up strokes with heavy muting. And then we get to the last riff in the song. All right, so that's kind of similar to what we did before. So this low D, and then pick it again and go hammer 3, 5, up to the 5th fret there on the A string. I like to just use my pinky to grab. All right, so now back to the low D open, and then the hammer on again, up to 6 on the A. And then the same again, but to 3 on the A. So this. So this. So you don't have that single open D for the very last one. So it's like the open low D, and then the hammer on into the 5th fret of the A, and then again open low D, then the hammer on to 6, and then the last time when you go to 3, don't hit the open there, just go straight into the hammer on. So it is. So that is it for Schism. A great track, got some interesting riffs in it, very unique riffs, and they all sound killer. So it's a great song to learn, and not that difficult to play. So you just got to get used to the sound of all the parts and where everything happens, and then it's pretty easy after that. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you again soon for GuitarLessons365.com.